The Galactic Council chamber was silent as the human ambassador stood. His expression was unreadable, his eyes sharp and cold. The gathered alien representatives, dozens of species from across the stars, watched him with varying degrees of amusement and irritation. They had long grown tired of humanity's complaints, their endless attempts at negotiation. "This is your final decision?" the ambassador asked, his voice controlled, but there was a sharp edge beneath the words. The Exilarian Chancellor, a towering reptilian with golden scales, leaned forward, his long claws tapping against the polished table. "Indeed, human. The Council has spoken. Your people will surrender all claims to the disputed systems, or we will be forced to take action." Murmurs of agreement spread across the room. A blue-skinned diplomat from the Vorshik Alliance sneered. "You should feel honored, human. We are offering you a way to exist under our rule. Many species have not been given such mercy." The ambassador did not react, but a storm was building behind his eyes. For years, Earth had tried to make peace. For years, they had followed the rules, played the game, obeyed the laws of the Council. And now, after all their patience, they were being told to kneel or be destroyed. A thin, insectoid creature from the Zix Dominion clicked its mandibles. "The sanctions will begin immediately. Trade routes closed. Resources restricted. Your fleets will not be allowed beyond the Sol system without inspection." The ambassador let out a slow breath. "And if we refuse?" The Exilarian Chancellor bared his fangs in a cruel smile. "Then we will come for you, human. Your worlds will burn. Your people will beg for mercy." The chamber erupted in laughter, cold, cruel, certain. The aliens did not fear humanity. To them, Earth was small, isolated, weak. A species that had only recently stepped beyond its own system, daring to challenge empires that had ruled for millennia. The ambassador did not laugh. He simply closed the data pad before him, straightened his suit, and looked around the room. His eyes lingered on each face, each smirking diplomat, each arrogant ruler. Then he spoke, his words slow and deliberate. "If this is your final decision," he said, "then humanity has no choice but to respond in kind." The laughter died. The air in the chamber shifted, something dark creeping into the atmosphere. Some of the younger diplomats felt a strange chill crawl down their spines, though they did not understand why. The Vorshik representative scoffed. "What are you saying, human? That you will fight us? With what? Your primitive fleets. Your outdated weapons. Your planet will fall before you can even." The ambassador cut him off with a simple movement. He lifted his wrist, pressed a small button on his communicator, and spoke one word. "Execute." Nothing happened. At least, nothing happened in the chamber. But across the galaxy, in a dozen key locations, hidden human fleets emerged from the darkness. Stealth ships that had never been detected before activated their engines. Spy satellites that had remained dormant for years suddenly came to life. Eye-controlled drones, programmed for war, moved into position. On the outer edges of the Galactic Council's territory, entire enemy stations went dark. Communications were jammed. Trade routes collapsed. Human operatives, who had lived among the aliens for years, unnoticed, executed their orders with precision. The Vorshik representative was still speaking, unaware that his homeworld had just lost contact with 3 of its colonies. The Exilarian Chancellor was still smirking, unaware that a human warship had just bypassed their planetary defenses undetected. The ambassador turned and walked toward the exit. He did not look back as he reached the massive chamber doors. But just before stepping through, he paused. "You wanted
The
to
Galactic
break us,"
Council's
he
fleet
said
moved
softly,
toward Earth
his
with
voice
confidence.
carrying across the
It was the
silent
largest
hall.
show of
You
force
wanted
ever
to control
assembled
us.
against a single
You
planet.
thought humanity was
Hundreds
weak.
of warships,
He turned
each
his head
bristling with
slightly,
weapons,
just
traveled
enough to
in
glance
perfect
over his
formation.
shoulder.
Their
Their
commanders did not
feel
feel
fear.
There
And
was no
then he
reason
was
to.
gone. The
For
humans
several
had
moments,
no chance.
the Council
The
remained
Exilarian Admiral
Then
Vorthak
the alarms began
stood
to
on
sound.
the bridge of his massive
Humanity had
dreadnought.
stopped talking.
The tyrant's fang.
And the galaxy was not
He
ready
watched
for what
as the
came
blue
next.
planet came into view. Such a fragile world. A single fleet bombardment could reduce it to nothing but fire and dust. "Any signs of surrender?" he asked. His communications officer, a pale-skinned Vorshak, shook his head. "No response from Earth, Admiral." Vorthak growled in irritation. "They are playing stubborn. No matter. We will break them." The fleet moved closer, their weapons locking onto key locations, military bases, power plants, spaceports. This would be a swift and brutal lesson. Humanity had dared to defy the Council, and now they would pay the price. Then, without warning, the flagship next to the Tyrant's Fang exploded. Not from enemy fire, not from an external attack. It simply vanished in a ball of light, torn apart from the inside. Panic filled the command deck. "What was that?" Vorthak roared. "Unknown, Admiral. No enemy ships detected. No weapons fired." Before anyone could react, another ship exploded, then another. Across the fleet, warships were being destroyed one by one. Not by missiles, not by laser fire, but by something else, something silent, invisible and unstoppable. On the bridge of the Tyrant's Fang, alarms blared. The tactical officer looked at his screen in horror. "Admiral, it's internal sabotage. Something inside our systems." "How?" Then the realization hit. Humanity had already been here. For years, unnoticed, human operatives had infiltrated the Galactic Council's fleet. Disguised as low-ranking engineers, technicians, even janitors, they had planted viruses, rewired power cores, sabotaged weapon systems, all waiting for the right moment. And now, that moment had come. Across the fleet, engines shut down. Weapons refused to fire. Shields collapsed. Some ships turned on their allies, controlled by hacked AI systems. The fleet was not in control of itself anymore. Then the final blow came. The humans attacked. Not from Earth. Not from any direction the aliens expected. Human warships, sleek, black, undetectable, emerged from the void behind them. These were not the slow, outdated ships the aliens had mocked. These were the real weapons of humanity, stealth battleships designed for war in the shadows. They fired. Kinetic railguns launched projectiles at near-light speed, tearing through armor like paper. Electromagnetic pulses disabled what little defense remained. Drones swarmed the crippled ships, boarding them, eliminating survivors with brutal efficiency. Admiral Vorthak could only watch as his entire fleet was destroyed in minutes. The mighty Council Armada, the fleet that was supposed to conquer Earth, never even got the chance to fire a shot. Then his screen flickered. A human face appeared. It was the same ambassador from the council meeting. But this time, he was not wearing a suit. He was dressed in military uniform, his eyes cold as ice. "I warned you," the human said. Vorthak tried to speak, to threaten, to demand answers, but before he could, his ship exploded. The war had begun, and humanity had already won the first battle. The news spread like wildfire. The Galactic Council's fleet, the greatest force assembled in centuries, was gone. Not just defeated, erased. Hundreds of warships, powerful enough to bring entire civilizations to their knees, had been reduced to wreckage in less than an hour. The council chambers, usually a place of order and control, were now in chaos. Representatives from dozens of species shouted over each other, their voices filled with panic and disbelief. "This is impossible," a Vorshak general roared. Humanity should not have this power. They were supposed to be weak. A Xilarian diplomat hissed, his golden scales rippling with rage. They should have begged for mercy. Yet, no amount of shouting could change the truth. Humanity had not just survived the Council's attack. They had planned for it. A Zix intelligence officer, his insectoid form twitching, slammed his claws on the table. They were always prepared. They let us believe they were helpless. They wanted us to attack. The realization sent a chilling silence through the room. The Galactic Council had walked into a trap. The Chancellor, once so confident in humanity's destruction, now sat frozen in his chair. His mind raced, searching for some explanation. "We have reserves," he muttered, almost to himself. "More fleets, more armies. We can regroup." A hologram flickered to life before him. It was a transmission from Earth. The ambassador's face appeared once more, but now he was not alone. Behind him stood military leaders, soldiers, men and women in armored uniforms. Their expressions were unreadable, their presence sending an unspoken message. This was no longer a negotiation. This was a warning. "I told you before," the ambassador said, his voice calm, measured. "We tried peace. We tried diplomacy. You rejected both." He leaned forward slightly. "Now we will show you what happens when humanity stops holding back." A Xylarian noble sneered. "You cannot fight the entire council. We have hundreds of worlds. You are but one species." The ambassador's lips curled into a faint, cold smile. "You still don't understand, do you?" he said softly. The transmission changed. It was no longer just the ambassador's face. Instead, it showed a map of the galaxy, with dozens of red markers spreading across council space. "These are your supply chains," the ambassador continued. "Your fuel stations, your shipyards, your trade routes." One by one, the red markers vanished. "We have already taken them." Gasps filled the chamber. This was not an invasion. This was a systematic dismantling of the entire council's power. "Our agents have been among you for years," the ambassador said. "Your fleets will find no refueling stations. Your soldiers will not receive supplies. Your worlds will not receive trade." The Xylarian noble slammed his fist on the table. "You lie. There's no way you could have." The lights in the chamber flickered. A council technician gasped, checking his systems. We're losing power. Entire communication networks are going dark." The ambassador's voice was ice. "Your civilizations rely on technology." He leaned in, his next words sending shivers down every alien's spine. "We control that technology now." Panic erupted. Some leaders rushed to their communicators, desperately trying to contact their fleets, their homeworlds, only to find silence. The ambassador's eyes darkened. "You thought you were ending us." His voice was quiet, yet it carried more weight than any warship. "Instead, you have unleashed something you were never prepared for." Then the transmission cut off. And across the galaxy, the Council's age of dominance collapsed in a single moment. Humanity was no longer a mere species. The Galactic Council's power was collapsing faster than anyone could comprehend. Supply routes were in flames. Communications had been hijacked. Entire star systems were turning against their rulers. And humanity had not yet fired its real weapons. The Council's leaders were in a state of pure panic. The Chancellor sat in the command bunker of the Central Authority, deep within the heart of Vorshik Prime. The room was filled with military officers, intelligence chiefs, and planetary governors. All of them were afraid. "They're cutting through our infrastructure like a disease," a Xylarian officer shouted. "Every time we try to regroup, our fleets find themselves stranded without supplies or fuel." A Zix intelligence commander, his mandibles clicking rapidly, snarled in frustration. They knew exactly where to strike. "Our shipyards, our logistics hubs, everything is compromised." The Chancellor slammed his fist on the table. Then counterattack. "We still have fleets. We still have armies." A silence fell over the room. That was when the truth sank in. They had fleets, but no one knew where humanity's real forces were. Every attempt to track the humans had failed. Their ships did not appear on sensors. Their transmissions were impossible to intercept. It was as if they were ghosts, moving through the void, striking wherever they pleased. And then, the first true attack came. It was the planet Xardos 9, a major fuel refinery that supplied the Council's war efforts. Heavily defended, a fortress world, untouchable, or so they thought. Without warning, the skies above Sardos 9 turned black. At first, the defenders believed it was some kind of storm. But then the darkness moved. It was thousands of human warships. Not the crude, outdated ships the Council had once mocked. These were sleek, angular destroyers. Battleships forged in secrecy. Vessels designed not just for war, but for annihilation. They did not announce their arrival. They did not demand surrender. They simply attacked. Massive kinetic rounds, moving at a fraction of light speed, tore through orbital defenses before they even had time to react. Space stations shattered. Shield generators collapsed under concentrated bombardment. Then the atmospheric strike began. Human dropships rained from the sky. Not thousands, not tens of thousands, but millions. The planetary defense forces had no time to prepare. Within hours, Sardos 9 had fallen. The Council's commanders expected humanity to occupy the world, to take it for themselves. But they didn't. Instead, they destroyed it. Not with bombs, not with missiles, with fire. Human warships ignited the planet's fuel reserves, creating an explosion so vast that half the system was bathed in fire. The once great stronghold was nothing but ashes drifting through space. The message was clear. This was no longer a war for survival. This was a reckoning. The Chancellor and his military staff watched in horror as the destruction unfolded on their screens. Sardos 9 was gone. A cold chill ran down the Chancellor's spine. We have to negotiate," he whispered. "No." A voice cut through the room. Everyone turned to see the Supreme General of the Council's forces, Drelvac of the Vorshak. His reptilian eyes burned with fury. "There will be no negotiation," Drelvac said. "We will fight. We will show these humans the wrath of the Galactic Council." No one spoke. They all knew the truth. There was no council anymore. Only the burning remains of an empire that had once ruled the stars. And humanity was not finished yet. The war had lasted only 2 weeks, but for the Galactic Council, it might as well have been 1,000 years of destruction. World after world had fallen silent. The Council's fleets had tried to regroup, to mount some kind of defense, but every time they did, the humans struck first. Every time they thought they were safe, another fleet disappeared. It was like fighting a shadow. And now, the shadow had reached the very heart of the Council itself. Vorshak Prime, the fortress world, the seat of power, the unbreakable stronghold. It was surrounded by 6 planetary defense stations, armed with enough firepower to hold off an entire invading force. It had a fleet of 4,000 warships in its orbit. It was home to billions of the Council's citizens, its leaders, its last remaining military might. If humanity wanted revenge, this was the final prize. The Council's remaining generals and admirals gathered in their war rooms, staring at the strategic displays, searching for any sign of an approaching fleet. None appeared. No massive armada. No endless swarm of human warships. Just silence. A silence so deep that it felt like the entire universe was holding its breath. Then, a single alarm blared. One ship had entered the system. Just one. It wasn't a massive dreadnought or an unstoppable battlecruiser. It was small, sleek, almost unremarkable. But every sensor in the system was screaming that something was wrong. It moved too fast. It was covered in some unknown material that absorbed scans. The Council's defenses tried to lock onto it, but their targeting systems flickered and failed. The Vorshak Supreme General, Drelvac, snarled at his officers. "Fire everything. Destroy it now." The defense stations obeyed instantly. Thousands of plasma cannons and missile batteries turned their sights on the lone ship and unleashed hell. But before the weapons could hit their target, the ship vanished. For half a second, every single system in the Council's command center blacked out. When the lights returned, the lone ship was inside the defense perimeter. It had just teleported past their strongest defenses. "Impossible," one of the Council's admirals gasped. Drelvac's blood ran cold. "It's not here to fight," he whispered. It's here to deliver a message. A transmission cut through every channel, overriding every system on the planet. A familiar face appeared on the screens. The human ambassador. He looked different now. His once friendly expression was gone. His eyes were sharp, cold, unforgiving. "This is over," he said, his voice echoing across the planet. "The Galactic Council tried to exterminate us. You betrayed every treaty, every agreement, every principle of diplomacy." He leaned forward. "And now you will answer for it." Drelvac slammed his fists on the table. "We will never surrender. We still have." The ambassador smiled. A slow, chilling smile. "We didn't come here for your surrender." The ship in orbit released something. Not a bomb, not a missile. Something worse. A pulse spread across Vorshik Prime's skies. Every weapon system, shield generator, communication network, all of it went dark. For the first time in its long history, Vorshik Prime was defenseless. The ambassador's voice rang through the silence. "You ruled the stars through fear. You crushed entire civilizations under your control. You thought no one could challenge you." A pause. "Now, the galaxy will watch as you fall." Then the sky burned. Human ships emerged from the void. Hundreds of them. The first wave descended not on the military bases, not on the government buildings, but on the palaces, the estates, the luxury towers of the council's elites. They didn't waste a single shot on the poor, the workers, the civilians who had been forced to serve under the council's rule. But the rulers, the ones who had ordered the war, they were hunted down. One by one, the council's leaders vanished. Some ran, some begged, some tried to fight. None survived. By the time the sun rose over Vorshik Prime, the Galactic Council no longer existed, and humanity's vengeance was complete. The news spread like wildfire. The Galactic Council was gone. Not defeated in battle, not forced to surrender. Erased. Vorshik Prime, the heart of the galaxy's ruling empire, had fallen in a single night. The Council's leaders had been hunted down, their fleets destroyed, their strongholds reduced to silence. And the ones responsible? Humans. For centuries, the Council had mocked humanity. They had seen Earth as weak, foolish, a species unworthy of power. They had never expected this. Across the galaxy, rulers, warlords, and planetary governors watched in horror. They had once feared the Council's armies, the massive fleets that could crush rebellions in a matter of hours. Now, they feared something far worse. Because humans had not just defeated the most powerful force in the galaxy. They had made an example of them. On the outer edges of the galactic core, a Selphar warlord stood before his advisors, staring at the holographic display. The image of Vorshik Prime's burning ruins reflected in his wide, terrified eyes. "This is madness," he whispered. "The Council ruled for 1,000 years, and they ended it in days." His second-in-command, a scared veteran of many battles, shook his head. "This is not madness," he said. "This is vengeance." The Selphar warlord turned toward him. "Then we must prepare for war," he said, his voice trembling. "Humanity will not stop here. They will come for us next." But the veteran did not share his leader's panic. He sighed, running a clawed hand over his scared face. "No," he said, "they won't." The warlord narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean?" The veteran pointed at the transmission still playing across the galaxy, the last message from the human ambassador before Vorshik Prime fell. The words echoed through the chamber. "We did not come here to rule. We did not come here to conquer. The Council attacked our people, and we answered. But now we are done. The galaxy is free. What happens next is up to you." The Selphar warlord sat in stunned silence. For the first time in history, the galaxy was without a ruler. No council, no supreme power to control the trade routes, the laws, the armies, and humanity had not claimed the throne. They had walked away. This terrified the warlord more than anything else. Because if humans did not seek power, if they had no interest in ruling the stars, what kind of warriors were they? On a distant mining colony, a young Sirac worker sat with his father, watching the galactic reports on a flickering holoscreen. Their people had suffered under the Council's rule. Their resources had been taken. Their people had been enslaved. And yet, the humans had not taken their place. The young Sirac looked up at his father. "What happens now?" he asked. His father, a man who had lived his whole life under the Council's oppression, took a slow, deep breath. "Now," he said, "we have a choice." The galaxy was on the edge of chaos. Some worlds would rise, some would fall. Old rivalries would return. But one thing was clear: the age of the Council was over. And humanity had proven a terrifying truth to every species in the galaxy. They had never needed an empire to be feared. They only needed a reason to fight. The galaxy held its breath. The Council was gone. Their fleets were ash and wreckage, their rule nothing but a memory. And humanity. They had vanished just as quickly as they had arrived. No occupation, no demands, no claim to power. It was unthinkable. Across 1,000 worlds, rulers, warlords, and leaders gathered in secret meetings. Fear filled every chamber. If the humans had done this to the Council, what would happen if another species angered them? No one wanted to find out. On the war-torn world of Corinva, a battered fleet commander stared at a transmission plane on his command deck. It was a message sent to every species across the stars. The human ambassador stood in the center of the screen, his eyes cold and unreadable. "The war is over." The commander leaned forward. "We did not seek power. We did not come for conquest. We came because the Council left us no choice. They struck first. We answered." Silence filled the chamber as the ambassador's next words burned themselves into history. "We will return to our worlds. But know this, if another empire rises and threatens our people, we will not ask for peace again. We will not negotiate. We will not wait." The message ended. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, a young officer whispered the words that all of them were thinking. "The humans, they are the new rulers of the galaxy." The fleet commander shook his head. "No," he said, his voice heavy. "They do not rule. They simply exist, and that is enough to keep us all in line." On Earth, there was no celebration, no parades, no grand speeches. The war had never been about glory. It had been about survival. And now, humanity watched the stars, knowing that peace was only an illusion. Somewhere, another power would rise. Another empire would see Earth as prey. But this time, the galaxy understood one thing. Humanity did not start wars. They ended them. And if war came again, the stars would burn once more.